The war is over. The reward is strange. The war was finally over after 7 long years of fighting in space and on distant planets. Humanity had won. The enemy, the Athari Empire, was powerful, ancient, and cruel. But they had fallen. The final battle ended with Earth's flag raised on the ruins of the Yethari capital. Celebrations echoed across the galaxy, but not everyone felt like celebrating. Captain Jackson sat alone in a quiet room on the edge of Earth Command's main ship. He stared at his reflection in the metal wall. His face was tired, scarred, and cold. He had lost friends, brothers, and even parts of himself in the war. He didn't care about medals or glory. He just wanted peace. But peace wasn't simple. Not when the High Command had a special gift for him. The door slid open. And a soldier walked in. "Captain Jackson," he said. "Standing straight, your reward has arrived." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "I didn't ask for a reward." He said, "This one was ordered by the Senate," the soldier said, then stepped aside. 2 guards entered, and between them was a figure. In chains, it was a woman, but not human. Her skin had a soft silver tone. Her hair was white and fell over her face. She wore torn alien robes and had glowing symbols on her arms. But her most shocking feature was her eyes bright silver, full of fear and fire. She looked young but not weak. Her hands were tied in metal cuffs, glowing red. She didn't speak, only stared at Jackson. "What the hell is this?" Jackson asked, standing up a Yethari female. The soldier said, "Royal blood. High caste, a rare one. She was captured alive and kept as a high-value prisoner, and now you're giving her to me." Jackson asked, shocked. "She is your reward?" the soldier said. For saving the capital, Jackson stepped closer, looking into her eyes. She didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't move. Only silence and anger lived in her stare. "This is wrong," Jackson said. "She's not a trophy. She's still dangerous," the guard warned. "We don't know what she is fully capable of." Jackson looked at the chains. They were not normal. They had alien symbols pulsing with light. Not just for holding, maybe for controlling. The woman still didn't speak, but for a second, her eyes flickered almost like she wanted to say something. Then she looked away. Jackson turned to the soldier. "What's her name?" "She hasn't spoken a word since capture," the soldier replied, "and the records." Classified. Jackson was now suspicious. Why give him a prisoner of this level? Why keep her name a secret? He looked back at her. "Unchained her," he said. The guard laughed nervously. "Sir, with all due respect, I said, unchained her." Jackson repeated, firm and cold. The guard hesitated, then touched the cuffs. The red light dimmed and the chains loosened. The woman took a slow breath, but didn't move. Her hands were free now. She looked at Jackson again. This time, her eyes showed something new: confusion, maybe even trust. "I don't want a slave," Jackson said, turning to the guards. "She'll stay in my custody, but she's not a prisoner." "Anymore," the soldier nodded reluctantly. "As you wish, sir." They left, and the room became silent again. Jackson poured water into a cup and placed it near her. She didn't take it. "I don't know who you are," he said gently, "but I don't want to hurt you. You're free to speak, if you want." Still nothing. She sat down slowly on the floor, eyes watching every move. Jackson sighed and sat on his bed across from her, 2 strangers in one room. Surrounded by silence and shadows, outside. Stars moved past the window as the ship continued its journey. Jackson looked at the glowing chains lying on the floor. He had a feeling he had just made a decision that would change his life, maybe even the galaxy. This was no ordinary prisoner, no ordinary gift. And something deep inside him whispered, she was never meant to be his reward. Just before he turned off the lights, she finally spoke. Her voice was soft but clear. "You should not have removed the chains." Jackson sat up, alert. Why? He asked. She looked at him with those glowing eyes. Because now, she whispered, they will come. Captain Jackson couldn't sleep. He sat in the corner of his quarters, watching the strange alien woman resting silently on the floor. She hadn't moved for hours. The empty metal cuffs still glowed dim red beside her. Even without the chains, there was something powerful about her. She hadn't said another word since her warning, because now they will come. Who were they? Her people? Assassins. Something worse. Jackson didn't know, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just some prisoner. She was something rare, something hidden, and someone wanted her chained for a reason. The next morning, he brought food, simple earth rations, a bottle of water, and a thermal blanket. She didn't touch them at first, just stared like a wild animal waiting for a trap. Jackson didn't push her. He placed the items on a small tray and left them by her side. You can eat when you're ready, he said. Softly, then he turned away and began working at his command desk. Reports from Earth, promotions, medals, and political interviews flooded his screen. He ignored them all. He kept glancing over his shoulder to check on her. After a while, he heard movement. She was eating slowly, carefully, like someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. When she drank water, her hands trembled. But her eyes never left him. Hours passed, and silence filled the room again. Then something unexpected happened. She stood up, took the blanket, and sat down on the bench near the wall, not on the cold floor anymore. It was a small thing, but Jackson noticed it. It was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, Sue didn't see him as an enemy anymore. That night, Jackson reviewed the data on her species. Yetheri females of royal caste were extremely rare. Their biology was unique neural energy patterns that didn't match any known species. Some old files even called them mind weavers or light callers. Legends, not facts. It didn't make sense. Why would a soldier be gifted something so dangerous, so unknown? He kept searching and came across an encrypted file. It was tagged, Alpha Class Clearance Only. He tried bypassing it, but it triggered a security alert. Now, Command would know he was looking deeper. Too late to stop now. Suddenly, the room lights flickered. Jackson looked up. The alien woman, still unnamed, was standing beside the metal cuffs. The red glow had turned blue. She wasn't touching them. But they were floating, vibrating in the air. What are you doing? Jackson asked, standing slowly. She didn't answer. The cuffs dropped to the floor with a loud thud. Then she turned to face him. My name is Sci-Fi, she said at last. Her voice was calm now, more controlled than before. Jackson blinked in. Surprise, I didn't think you'd ever speak again. I speak when I choose to. She replied, then paused. You are different from your kind. Jackson nodded. I don't believe in chains. Sci-Fi looked around the room. This place. It's not meant for peace. No, Jackson said. It's not. She walked slowly to the small window, looking at the stars. My people believed stars were alive. She said, almost whispering, each one a memory, a soul watching us. Jackson leaned against the wall beside her. Then I hope the stars forgive us, he said. Because we've all done terrible things? She looked at him again, this time with a softer gaze. You fought in the war. She said, I did. Did you enjoy it? No, he replied, but I didn't stop. Silence again. Then Sci-Fi turned and sat on the edge of the bench, wrapping the blanket around her. There are marks on your body, she said. Pointing to his neck and shoulder, scars, he said, from battle. She reached out gently, almost touching them, then pulled her hand back. Jackson noticed something. The glowing symbols on her arm, they were moving, shifting like liquid. Under her skin, what are those marks on you? Ah, he asked. They are not marks, she replied. They are seals. Seals for what? To hold back what I am? Jackson frowned. And what are you? She looked at him with silver eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. I am the reason the war started. Before he could respond, a sharp alarm buzzed from the door panel. Unauthorized signal detected. Jackson opened his weapon locker and grabbed a plasma pistol. He moved to the door, scanning for threats. Stay here, he told her. No, she replied firmly, standing up. If they found me, then you are already a target. Jackson stared at her. For the first time, she looked like a fighter, not a prisoner. Whoever they were coming fast. And Safara was no longer the helpless chained woman from yesterday. She was waking up. Captain Jackson stood by the door, weapon in hand. The alarm lights flashed red, filling the room with shadows and warning beeps. Someone or something was trying to enter the ship's system. Unauthorized, silent, and fast. It wasn't just a glitch. It was a threat. Behind him, Safara stood quietly. She looked calm, but her eyes were brighter than before. Glowing silver like two moons, Jackson could feel heat in the air. Not from machines, but from her. I thought you said they were coming, Jackson whispered. Safara didn't blink. They are already here, she said. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the screen on Jackson's desk turned black. Strange alien symbols began to appear, moving like they were alive, not human language, not Yathari code either. Something older. Jackson turned to Safara. Is this your doing? She shook her head slowly. No, she said, but they are trying to find me, and if they do, then we both die. He didn't ask more. He knew the game had changed. He looked at the glowing cuffs on the floor, the ones that once kept her chained. Now they were harmless. Cold metal. Tell me the truth, Jackson said firmly. What are you really? Safara stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. When I was a child, she began, I could hear voices inside light. Not madness, not dreams, real voices of machines, stars, even people before they spoke. My people were afraid of me, so they gave me to the priests. She raised her arm, showing him the shifting seal under her skin. These are not tattoos, she said. They are energy locks. They were put on me to hide my mind from the galaxy. Why? Jackson asked. Because when I am fully awake, she whispered, I connect to things I should not. Jackson's hands tightened on his weapon. Are you saying you're some kind of psychic weapon? Safara didn't answer. Instead, she moved to the center of the room and closed her eyes. A hum began to fill the air, soft at first, like a song in a cave, then stronger, deeper, until the walls seemed to pulse. Jackson watched in shock as the symbols on her skin glowed white. The air shimmered around her like heat on desert sand. And then, just for a second, he saw something impossible. The ship's control panel lit up without touch, responding to her presence. You're controlling the systems, he said. I'm not, she replied, eyes still closed. They're responding to me, suddenly. A loud noise echoed outside. Metal clanged against metal. Something was boarding the ship. Jackson rushed to the door, opening a small security feed. A small vessel had attached itself to the outer hull, black, silent, and not registered. No insignia, no crew logs. A ghost ship. They've found you, Jackson said. Safara opened her eyes. No, she whispered. They've found us. The door shook as something tried to cut through from the other side. Jackson raised his weapon, aiming at the center, back. Up, he told her, but she didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward. Placing her hand on the wall beside the door, the metal under her palm glowed faintly. Jackson's weapon began to shake in his hands, and the air grew heavy. He looked down and saw the power cells in his gun overloading. Wait, what are you doing? He shouted. Saphira stepped back, and the gun in Jackson's hands shut off completely. Dead. I saved your life, she said calmly. They were going to use that weapon against you. Jackson stared at her, confused. They can take control of weapons now. They can take control of anything made with thought and metal, Saphira said. That's why I was locked away. The door burst open, but no soldiers stood there, only a swirling black mist, alive, crackling with small sparks of blue. It moved like a creature, but had no face. Jackson had never seen anything like it. It's not alive, Saphira said, her voice hard now. It's a machine mind sent to capture me. The black mist flew toward her. Jackson jumped between them, trying to shield her, but she pushed him aside gently. Trust me, she said. She raised her hands, and for a moment, everything went silent. The ship, the alarms. Even Jackson's heartbeat, like time, had stopped. Then a burst of white light exploded from her chest. Not fire, not energy, something deeper. The mist screamed, a sharp, high sound that hurt Jackson's ears. And then, just like that, it vanished, gone. The lights returned, and the room fell quiet. Jackson stared at her, shocked. You're not a weapon, he whispered. You're something else. Saphira nodded, breathing hard. I was never meant to be used, she said. I was meant to be hidden. Jackson sat down, trying to understand who had sent the mist. Why were they hunting her? And most of all, what was waking up inside her? He didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was clear. Saphira was no ordinary alien woman. She was a secret the galaxy was not ready for. And now that secret was in his hands. The ship was quiet again. Too quiet. After the black mist vanished, Jackson had sealed the doors and shut down external signals. He didn't want any more surprises, but deep inside, he knew this was just the beginning. Saphira sat on the floor, back against the wall. Her eyes half closed. The blast of energy she had released had taken a toll on her. Her hands trembled, and her breathing was slow. But she was still awake, still dangerous, still beautiful in a strange, otherworldly way. Jackson watched her from the other side of the room. He couldn't decide what she truly was. Weapon, victim, mystery, or all three. He turned back to his terminal, trying once again to access the classified files. This time, something was different. The screen blinked, then opened a hidden folder. It wasn't just from Earth's command. Was from Project Helix, a name he hadn't heard in years. He opened the file. Text scrolled fast across the screen. His eyes narrowed as he read line by line. Experiments, psychic trials, sealed technology, ancient ruins, and in the middle of it all, one subject name, Saphira 07. He looked up at her. She hadn't moved. He read further. She wasn't just captured after the war. She had been found before it even started. Sealed in a vault beneath a ruined alien temple, hidden away by her own kind. Not a prisoner, a warning. The report mentioned her powers were unstable. The priests of her race believed she was connected to something far greater. A network of energy older than the Athari, possibly older than the stars. And then it said something that made Jackson's skin go cold. Saphira must never be awakened completely, or the veil will open. He turned to her again. You were never captured during the war, were you? He asked. She opened her eyes slowly. No, she said quietly. I was given to your leaders before the war began. Why? So they would never go looking for the others. Jackson stood up. What others? Saphira looked down at her arms where the seals still glowed faintly. There are more like me, she said. Scattered across the galaxy, sleeping, our minds are connected, even in sleep. But if one wakes up fully, the others begin to stir. Jackson felt the weight of her words settle like a storm. Is that why the mist came for you? She nodded. They are not just hunters, she said. They are sentinels. Machines left behind by those who feared us. Long ago, someone tried to destroy our kind not because we were evil, but because we saw too much. Jackson leaned against the cold wall. Trying to think, so Earths knew, he muttered. They accepted you not as a prisoner, but as a secret to hide. Sci-Fi didn't answer. Her silence was the answer. He felt anger rise inside him. They had used him, made him believe she was a trophy, when really he was her jailer. And yet, in all this, she'd never hurt him. Not once. She had saved his life and warned him when she didn't have to. Why me? He asked, why give you to me? Sci-Fi looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. Because they knew you were broken, she said softly. Someone who would follow orders but not ask too many questions. But you surprised them? Jackson laughed bitterly. Well, I'm full of surprises. Suddenly, the ship shook. Not from outside, but from within. The lights flickered again, and a low hum filled the air. Sci-Fi stood up quickly. They're back, she said. No, Jackson said, checking the sensors. There's no ship nearby. Then he saw it. A signal rising from the lower decks. Something had activated. Something on board. Jackson grabbed a flashlight and motioned to Sci-Fi. Stay close. They moved through the dark hallway. Floor panels creaking beneath them. It felt colder here, like something was draining energy from the walls. They reached the cargo bay. There, hidden behind old crates, was a strange box, black and smooth, pulsing with light. Jackson had never seen it before. Sci-Fi froze, her eyes locked on the box. I know this, she whispered. It's from the temple. Jackson stepped closer. The box opened on its own. Inside was a small orb floating, glowing, covered in the same symbols as Sci-Fi's skin. She reached for it, but Jackson grabbed her hand. Wait, he said. What is it? She looked at him. It's a memory. She said, not mine, but one of my kind. If I touch it, I'll remember something I never lived. Jackson hesitated. Will it hurt you? She smiled slightly. Only if it shows the truth, and then she touched it. Light filled the room, a flash of stars, voices, screams, and ancient cities burning. Jackson saw glimpses through her eyes. He saw Earth but, not in the past, in the future. A future where Sci-Fi stood alone, floating above a ruined world, crying, and behind her others just like her, rising one by one from the ashes. The light vanished. Sci-Fi collapsed, unconscious. Jackson caught her just in time as he held her. In his arms, one thought echoed in his mind. She was not sent to destroy the galaxy, she was sent to stop it from destroying itself. And Earth Command had just triggered the wrong future. Sci-Fi didn't wake up for hours. Jackson sat beside her, silent, watching her face. She looked peaceful now, even with the glowing marks on her skin pulsing like a slow heartbeat. But inside Jackson's mind, there was a storm. The vision from the orb had shaken him. He had seen cities fall, stars blink out. He had seen her floating in the sky alone, powerful, and weeping. Was that the future? Or just one of many possible endings? He didn't know, but it scared him more than any enemy he had faced in war. When Sci-Fi finally opened her eyes, her first word was Jackson. He looked at her, unsure how to speak. You passed out, he said. I saw too much, she whispered. He nodded. I saw it too. She sat up slowly, holding her head. There are others, she said, awakening like me. But they are confused, angry, and scared if we don't reach them in time. The galaxy will fall into chaos. Jackson didn't respond. He stood up and walked across the room, his hands in fists. He had read war files, seen secret plans, but nothing like this. He felt used, betrayed, manipulated by both sides, Earth and Yathari. And now Sci-Fi, the only one he had started to trust, might be the greatest threat of all. You said you didn't remember your past, he said without turning around. I didn't, Safara said, until the orb. But you knew you were dangerous, Jackson replied, and you didn't tell me. She stood up behind him, her voice low. I didn't lie, she said. I didn't know everything, only pieces. I didn't want to hurt you, but you might, Jackson. Snapped, finally turning to face her. You think I can just forget what I saw? You standing in the sky over Earth, surrounded by destruction. Tears formed in her glowing eyes. That's not what I want, she said. It doesn't matter what you want, Jackson said. That's what happens if even one of you loses control. Planets die. Safara stepped back as if hit. She looked down at her hands, glowing softly in the dim light. I never asked for this power, she whispered. I never wanted to be anything more than free. The words hung heavy in the air. Jackson paced back and forth. Earth Command knew, he said. They gave you to me like a pet, like a test. Did they think I would kill you if things went wrong? Safara didn't answer. That silence said enough. Jackson walked to his console and opened a secured message. A new order had arrived from Command. His eyes scanned the screen, then froze. Immediate termination of Asset SO7 authorized if threat. Level reaches Tier 3. His name was listed under the order. His hands shook. They had planned this from the start. He wasn't just her keeper, he was her executioner. Safara's voice broke the silence. I felt the moment you read it, she said. The order? Jackson looked at her, stunned. You read my mind? No, she replied softly. Just your pain. He turned off the screen. So what now? He asked bitterly. You want me to follow you around the galaxy while you wake up ancient god beings? And if they lose control? If you lose control? I don't know, Safara said, but I do know this. If I go alone, I won't survive. If we go together, maybe we have a chance to guide them, to stop the worst. I can't trust you, Jackson said quietly. Then don't, she replied. Trust yourself. Silence fell again. Then the ship lights turned blue. A signal tone beeped from the console. Another transmission was coming in. It was from Earth Command. Jackson didn't answer. He let the message play. A cold voice filled the room. Captain Jackson, Asset SO7, has reached critical psychic output. You are ordered to report for emergency retrieval and elimination. Jackson turned to Safara. She didn't move. Didn't blink, just waited. He walked to the console. Stared at the red button. If he pressed it, Earth's ships would arrive in minutes. They would take her, or destroy her. It would all be over, Jackson, Safara said. If you believe I'm dangerous, press it. I won't fight. I won't run. He looked at her, really looked at her, not as a threat, not as an alien, but as someone who had been caged for too long, who had only known fear and silence. He stepped away from the button. No, he said. I'm done following blind orders. Safara let out a breath she had been holding. You'll be hunted too, she said. I already was, he replied. But now I'm choosing my side. He grabbed his gear and opened the escape path from the ship's lower hatch. We leave tonight, he said. Where? To find the others, he said, before someone else does. As they disappeared into the stars, Jackson knew one thing for sure. Trust had been broken. But something stronger was now growing in its place. Purpose. Asterisk. The stars stretched endlessly. Ahead of them, Jackson piloted a stolen scout ship through deep space silence. Safara sat beside him, her eyes closed, her breathing calm. They hadn't spoken much since they escaped. But the silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of things unsaid. Pain, trust, confusion. And something else growing quietly. They were fugitives now. Earth Command had labeled Jackson. As Rogue Safara was marked as a Class E threat too dangerous to live. Every military ship in the sector had orders to shoot on sight. Jackson didn't care anymore, not about orders, medals, or old loyalties. He had seen too much. And now he was risking everything for someone who used to be the enemy. But she wasn't the enemy now. She was something else entirely, after 2 days of silence. Safara finally opened her eyes and spoke. "I found one." Jackson looked over. "Another like you." She nodded. "In the Hira belt. A desert moon. There's someone sleeping there." Calling out in the dark, Jackson adjusted course as the ship curved toward the coordinates. A soft blue light pulsed from her hands. "You're getting stronger," he said. "I'm getting closer to who I really am," she replied. They reached the Hira moon at dusk. The place was empty, dry, and covered in red dust, buried beneath the surface. Safara led them to an old temple ruin, same design as the one in her memory. She touched the stone entrance, and it opened without force. Inside, it was cold and quiet. They walked through tunnels lined with ancient carvings, symbols that Jackson couldn't read. But Safara could. "They're warnings," she said, "telling us not to wake what sleeps here." As they reached the central chamber, they found it a glass pod floating in the center of the room. Inside was another alien, glowing faintly, sealed in stasis. "She's like me," Safara whispered, "but younger, more unstable." Before she could begin the waking process, a high-pitched alarm echoed through the temple. Jackson pulled his weapon. "We're not alone." A blast shook the walls. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, black ships dropped from orbit Earth. Command's elite. They had followed them. Jackson grabbed Safara's hand. "We need to go, now." But it was too late. Explosions rocked the ground as soldiers entered the temple. Weapons raised, Jackson returned fire, using the stone walls as cover. Safara raised her hands, and energy pulsed through the air, blocking bullets mid-flight, bending metal around her like water. Jackson watched her fight, not with rage, but with purpose. She didn't kill, only protected. Even as walls shook and enemies swarmed, her face stayed calm, controlled. But then, a voice came through the enemy speakers. "Stand down, Captain Jackson." It was General Voss, his former commanding officer. "You've been lied to," Voss continued. "She's not the victim. She's the first wave." Safara froze. Her breath caught. "What does he mean?" Jackson asked. "I don't know," she said, but her voice trembled. "I thought I was one of many," she whispered. "But what if I was the one who was meant to wake them all?" More soldiers poured in. Jackson took a blast to his shoulder and dropped. Safara cried out, ran to him, hands glowing bright with power. Energy wrapped around his wound, closing it within seconds. "You saved me again," Jackson whispered. "You keep doing that." Her hands lingered on his face. "I would rather die than lose you," she said softly. He looked into her glowing eyes. And in that moment, the war, the orders, the fear, it all faded. "I believe you," he said. He pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't planned. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. A wave of energy exploded around them, pure white light knocking soldiers back and causing systems to fail. Every light in the temple flickered out. The enemy ships outside powered down one by one, dead. In the air, Safara's power had changed. Not just stronger life, fueled by something deeper than ancient energy. Fueled by choice, by love. The temple went still. Jackson stood beside her, breathing hard. Around them, no more attacks came. "Did we just win?" he asked. "For now," Safara said, "but they'll be back." She looked at the sleeping figure in the pod, still untouched. "She's not ready yet. We have to move her." As they carried the pod out together, the stars above them shimmered. The galaxy had just felt her power. It would respond soon. But Jackson didn't care about the galaxy. Not right now. He looked at Safara, and for the first time since the war ended, he smiled. "Let them come," he said. "We'll face them together." The stars above the quiet moon seemed different now, brighter, softer, like they were no longer watching from a distance. Jackson stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the valley below. The battle was over, for now. But the journey wasn't. Beside him, Safara sat with her knees pulled up to her chest. The glowing marks on her arms were fading slowly, not disappearing, but becoming part of her. No longer burning, no longer chains. The second sleeper, the young girl they had rescued, was safe inside a quiet shelter nearby, still unconscious. Still dreaming, but protected, for the first time in weeks. There was peace. No alarms, no soldiers, no shadows waiting in the dark. Only wind, stars, and silence. Jackson looked at Safara. "You're different," he said softly. She smiled. "So are you." He sat beside her. "You're not afraid anymore." "I still am," she whispered, "but now I'm not afraid of myself." They sat in silence for a while. Then Safara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal object, one of her old energy cuffs. It was cracked, empty, powerless. She placed it on the ground between them. "This was never just metal," she said. "It was a story, one the galaxy kept telling me over and over. That I was dangerous, that I had to be controlled, that I could never choose for myself." Jackson didn't speak. He only listened. "I believed it for a long time," she continued. "I thought the chains were the only reason I hadn't destroyed everything. But I was wrong." She looked at him, her voice shaking slightly. "You were the first person who didn't look at me like a weapon or a curse. You looked at me like I was." Someone, Jackson, picked up the broken cuff and studied it. "It's strange," he said. "This thing started as your prison, and now it's just a memory." She took it back. "I'll keep it," she said, "to remind me that even chains can be broken." A long silence passed. Then Jackson stood up and reached into his pack. He pulled out a small silver ring made from staralloy, melted and shaped by his own hands. No diamonds, no jewels, just simple, strong metal. Safara's eyes widened. "What is that?" Jackson kneeled beside her. "It's not a chain," he said. "It's a choice." She covered her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. "You want to marry me?" He nodded. "Not because you're human or alien, not because of your powers or your past, but because you changed me. You showed me a better way to live." Safara took the ring in her shaking fingers. It felt warm in her hand. "I never thought someone would want to marry a creature like me," she whispered. "You're not a creature." Jackson said, "You're Safara, and you were never a slave." She leaned forward and kissed him soft, gentle, full of everything words couldn't say. When they pulled apart, she slipped the ring onto her finger. "I choose this," she said, smiling through her tears. "Not because I have to, but because I want to." That night, they lit a small fire near the edge of the cliff. Not for heat, but for memory. Jackson carved their initials into a piece of old ship metal, and Safara etched a glowing symbol beside it, one of peace, not war. The stars above flickered again. A new signal appeared on their radar, faint, distant, but familiar. Another sleeper was awakening. Safara stood beside Jackson, holding his hand. "Are you ready to do this again?" she asked. He smiled. "Only if you're by my side." They didn't know what the future would bring. More battles, more choices, maybe even more pain. But now, they would face it together, not as soldier and weapon, not as captor and captive, but as partners as they boarded their ship again, leaving the quiet moon behind. The galaxy whispered with new energy, hope, fear, change, and somewhere in the hearts of people across distant worlds, the story would spread of a human soldier and the alien woman he chose not to control, but to love, of a chained soul who broke free and became something more. Not a weapon, not a reward, but a symbol, a story passed from world to world, ending with one truth. She was never a slave, she was always a queen.